We repainted your room for the baby. That was the first sentence I heard after returning home from the hospital, still smelling faintly of disinfectant, still wearing the hospital bracelet on my wrist. She didn't look at me when she said it. She was sipping from a green smoothie, scrolling on her phone, seated in my favorite armchair. The one next to the window I'd always opened each morning to water my violets. If you've ever seen a woman erased from her own family, stay with me till the end. And tell me, where are you watching from? Have you seen something like this happen in your town? Subscribe if you believe in justice for those quietly pushed out. I just stood there in the entrance of my own house, holding a tote bag with the book I never finished and a cardigan I thought I'd wear when guests visited me in recovery. There were no guests, only my daughter-in-law, Rachel. Rachel had always been particular. Efficient, yes. Confident, definitely. But there was a kind of cold steel behind her friendliness, something that felt more practiced than sincere. My son Aaron loved her deeply, or perhaps he loved the way she steered their life like a high-speed train. No delays, no mess, no detours. But nothing prepared me for this. While I was in the hospital after slipping on the front porch, tearing my hip ligaments and enduring 4 days of scans, therapy consultations, and pain my own room, my sanctuary had been completely redone. "Let me show you," she said, with a voice so syrupy it made my knees weak. She stood, smoothed her yoga pants, and led me down the hallway. My legs still ached, but I followed like a ghost. The door to my room, previously decorated with a small hanging plaque that said, "Grandma's nest," was gone. The sign was gone. In its place, a pale wooden door painted cream. Inside, nothing of mine remained. My floral bedding, my family photo shelf, the quilt I'd spent 3 months sewing, all gone. Instead, pale yellow walls with ducks and clouds, a white crib, a new rocking chair and a changing station stocked with wipes and ointments. "We thought you'd prefer more peace in the guest room upstairs," Rachel said, beaming. "This room gets better sunlight for the baby's development, and honestly, it just made more sense." She turned to me. "You understand, right?" I couldn't speak. My throat burned. I looked around for a trace of my life, something, anything. But even the drawer knobs had been replaced. My world had been unstitched and resewn into a nursery. Aaron wasn't home. He had meetings, she said. I was handed a small box that contained a few items: my hairbrush, a single slipper, only 1.5 eaten peppermint I kept in a drawer. It felt more like a donation box than a relocation. I went upstairs slowly and found the so-called guest room. It was cold. The sheets were stiff. The window faced the neighbor's wall. Nothing felt like mine anymore. Later that evening, Aaron called me from the car, as if he were too busy to be present in this bizarre shift. "Mom, we thought this was best for everyone. Rachel's been stressed and we're trying to prepare early for the baby. The doctor said the nursery has to be in a central part of the house." I tried to say, but that was my room. He interrupted. "We didn't want to worry you while you were in the hospital. It was meant to be a surprise, a happy one." A happy one. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and wondered if I was still part of this household, or if I had become a long-term guest whose welcome was slowly expiring. The next morning, I came downstairs early thinking maybe I'd find comfort in brewing coffee. But the coffee machine was gone, replaced by some sleek touchpad contraption I didn't know how to use. Rachel was already up. "Oh, I donated your old coffee maker." It was time. Time apparently was also up for my seat at the breakfast table. I stood by the kitchen counter watching as she poured oat milk into a tiny glass for herself. 3 plates were on the table, one for her, one for Aaron, one with a placemat that said, "Baby J." Where do I sit?" I asked. She looked surprised. "Oh, sorry, I guess I assumed you'd eat upstairs. You know, less stairs back and forth." I didn't want to cry in front of her, so I nodded and went upstairs, holding a granola bar I found in my bag like it was dignity. But it didn't stop there. My mail had stopped arriving in the main pile. Instead, it was bundled and left in a shoebox outside my door. My phone rang. It was my friend Georgia from church. I picked up and smiled for the first time in days. "Oh, honey," she said. "I stopped by with soup, but Rachel said you were sleeping and not to be disturbed." She took the casserole, though. That was the third friend who told me something similar, and when I asked Rachel about it, she simply said, "You need rest. You always say recovery matters." She was right, I always said that. But when I said it, it wasn't code for isolation. Over the next few days, I realized how silent the house had become for me. I heard laughter from the downstairs TV room, smelled takeout food I wasn't invited to share, and saw family photos being rearranged on the walls, newer, brighter, Rachel-centric ones. One morning I descended the stairs and caught Rachel adjusting a frame on the mantel. It was a photo of her holding the ultrasound printout, Aaron kissing her cheek, where my framed family photo used to be. "Where's the picture of us? The one from Aaron's graduation?" I asked. "Oh," she said, "I think it didn't match the aesthetic anymore." The aesthetic. My existence was now a design flaw. Every piece of my presence was being folded away quietly, politely, thoroughly. And yet, whenever visitors came, Rachel played the doting daughter-in-law role perfectly. "Oh yes, she's doing so well," she'd chirp. "We're giving her all the peace she needs." Peace. More like purgatory. That night, I stood in the upstairs hallway staring down at what used to be my home. I thought about how I used to host Thanksgiving here, how I taught Aaron to read on that living room couch, how I held him through fevers and bad dreams and heartbreak. Now I was a ghost in a house filled with fresh paint and soft music. But what none of them knew not yet was that I'd already begun keeping notes. Every detail, every change, every offhand comment. Because something inside me stirred not rage but resolve. They could repaint a room, but they wouldn't repaint history. But I didn't know yet that the nursery wasn't the end of the plan. It was just the first erasure. The first morning I awoke in the guest room, the light was wrong. Not just unfamiliar wrong. Dim and grey and slightly yellowed like the light in a budget motel bathroom. I used to wake to sunlight streaming over my window seat, landing softly on the lace curtains. Now I opened my eyes to shadows dancing across the neighbour's bricks and the faint hum of the attic vent. There was a note taped to my door. "Please don't come downstairs before 9 a.m. Rachel needs rest." No signature. Just a sticky note with tidy handwriting and a little flower doodle in the corner, as if that softened the message. I stared at it for a long time. Something had shifted. Not suddenly like a door slamming shut, but gradually like a house settling in ways that make you feel unsafe without knowing why. When I reached for my pill organizer that morning, I paused. The pills were arranged differently. Rachel had offered to reorganize my medications during my hospital stay, said she'd consulted with her pharmacist friend. I'd thanked her at the time. But now the Monday compartment, which always held my cholesterol meds and the low-dose aspirin, was filled with only 2 white capsules I didn't recognize. I checked the rest of the days. Everything had been altered. The labels on the bottles had been peeled off and replaced with neatly printed ones, typed and laminated, heart support, memory booster, anti-inflammatory. I stood in the guest room holding a bottle in one hand and my old schedule in the other. Something wasn't right. Why were the generic names gone? Why did everything feel curated? I took only the aspirin that morning. Downstairs, the kitchen had been scrubbed clean. I don't mean clean like someone wiped down the counters. I mean sterile, no open cereal boxes, no hanging mugs, no spoon in the sink. All of my mugs were gone. My blue ceramic one with World's Okayest Grandma was no longer in the cupboard. In its place were matching minimalist glasses and beige mugs that looked like they belonged in a catalogue. I asked Rachel gently, "Did we donate some dishes?" She nodded while cutting an avocado in perfect slices. "Oh, I just thought we could refresh the kitchenware a bit. You know, prepare for a more child-safe environment. Sharp edges, lead glaze concerns, all that." Lead glaze. My mug had been with me for 10 years. I looked around. The entire downstairs had changed while I was in the hospital. My family photos on the side table replaced by abstract paintings. My knitting basket nowhere in sight. Even the calendar on the wall, the one where I'd written birthdays appointments, dentist checkups for Aaron, had been replaced with a sleek digital screen that just said, "This week, healthy habits only." That afternoon, I asked Aaron if we could talk, just the two of us. I invited him for tea on the porch. He agreed, but Rachel joined anyway, bringing her matcha and sitting between us. I tried to speak to tell him that I was feeling a bit displaced, but he seemed distracted, answering emails, occasionally squeezing Rachel's hand and smiling at her as if I weren't speaking at all. I watched them like someone on the other side of a glass wall. And then something small but cutting happened. I went to unlock the storage cabinet by the stairs, the one where I'd kept a box of old photo albums and a pair of ballet slippers I was saving for my granddaughter. The key didn't fit. I tried again. Nothing. I asked Rachel, "Did something happen to the cabinet lock?" "Oh," she said. Without looking up, "We changed the locks last week. Baby-proofing." Baby-proofing. A cabinet 5 feet off the ground behind a heavy door was baby-proofed. And in the process, I'd lost access to everything inside. When I requested the new key, Rachel said smoothly, "Let me check where I put it." That was 3 days ago. She hasn't mentioned it since. The next evening, I noticed the door to the garage had a new keypad lock. I asked about that too. "Oh, it's just temporary," Rachel said. "We had a small scare with some deliveries being stolen, and we wanted to tighten up household access." Household access. As if I were someone who might need permission to enter the garage of the home I helped finance 10 years ago. That night, I walked into the living room just as Rachel ended a call on speakerphone. "Yes, she's recovering, but we're slowly transitioning her into more of a passive role around here." A passive role. I stood frozen in the hallway. I wanted to step forward to say, "Excuse me," but instead I backed away, ashamed of how invisible I'd become. Later, I checked my emails. My family group thread had been strangely quiet. I scrolled through old messages and realized a new group had been created, one I wasn't added to. The title of the group, Next Gen Planning. I didn't need to ask what that meant. I wasn't next gen. I wasn't even present gen anymore. I was leftover gen. Have you ever felt it? That slow erasure. The kind that doesn't scream, but silences. The kind that doesn't lock you out violently, but politely folds you away. If so, I'm not alone. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been removed, not with cruelty, but with cold courtesy? Your story might help someone else feel seen. That weekend, I opened the fridge and found a new meal schedule posted on it. Rachel had made it. Clean eating calendar, it said. No red meat, no dairy, no caffeine, no processed sugars, household-wide. She hadn't asked me. I looked in the pantry. The ginger cookies I liked were gone. The coffee I drank for 30 years, gone. In their place, quinoa lentil chips herbal detox blends. "You'll feel so much better on this," Rachel told me, smiling as she handed me a cup of licorice tea. Gut health is mental health. I hadn't asked for help with either. One night, I found myself sitting on the edge of my bed, the new bed in the guest room, staring at a framed ultrasound photo that had been slid under my door with a note. "Coming soon, baby J. Just a little longer, and everything will be perfect." Perfect for whom? Not for me. And then came the last straw. Or so I thought. I tried to print out a prescription refill at my usual pharmacy. I'd always done it online, but the system locked me out. "You've been removed as the primary account holder," the screen read. When I called Aaron, he said, "Oh, Rachel streamlined the accounts, we've got you covered. It's just easier this way." Easier. Everything seemed easier without me, but I still had my instincts. So I started documenting, not out of malice, but to keep myself anchored in truth. Because when the ground starts shifting under your feet, you cling to evidence that it ever belonged to you. Each lock changed, each missing object, each meal denied, each offhand remark. I wrote it all in a small notebook I kept tucked under my pillow, because deep down, I had a feeling that this wasn't just about repainting a room. It was about redrawing the borders of a family, and my name was being erased from the map. But what I didn't know yet was that my erasure had already been filed somewhere I'd never thought to look. It began with my granddaughter's voice, or rather the absence of it. Sophie used to call me every Wednesday afternoon after school. She'd burst through the phone with stories about her spelling tests and who had the weirdest lunch. Those calls didn't just fill my day, they stitched me into the fabric of her world. But 3 weeks had passed since I'd last heard her voice. When I asked Rachel if Sophie was free to chat, she smiled, tight, pleasant, rehearsed. Oh, she's got a full schedule. Piano swim class, and now we're starting a mindfulness club for the kids at school. So good for regulation. But I'll tell her you asked. She never called back. That night, I overheard a conversation outside my room. Aaron, she keeps asking to talk to Mom. Rachel. It's just confusing for her right now. The less chaos, the better. Aaron, she's not chaos. Rachel, she represents old energy. Sophie needs grounding in the now. Old energy. I wasn't a person anymore, I was a vibe that needed managing. So I tried to find comfort in church. I used to attend every Sunday, even helped organize bake sales and quilt drives. Georgia and Carla, my two closest friends, used to pick me up. They hadn't in weeks. I called Georgia. Rachel said you needed time to rest. She said, her voice soft, uncertain. She said you'd asked not to be disturbed. I sat frozen on the edge of the guest bed, pressing the phone to my ear like it could tether me back to something familiar. I never said that I whispered. I thought that might be the case, she replied. But I didn't want to make things complicated. When your own friends are afraid to disrupt the narrative someone else has crafted for you, you start to wonder who's telling your story. The next day, I asked Aaron to take me to the church potluck. I was dressed ready by the door, wearing the floral blouse Sophie said made me look like a happy sunflower. He hesitated. Rachel thinks it might be too much stimulation right now. I'm not a toddler, I said. My voice cracked. He looked genuinely torn. But he didn't take me. They went without me, and brought back a plate of lentils wrapped in plastic. That night, I stared at my reflection in the hallway mirror and didn't recognize the woman blinking back at me. Her eyes were dull, her shoulders rounded forward. She looked like someone apologizing for taking up space. I started keeping to myself, more hoping that quiet compliance might earn me access back into the spaces I once belonged to. It didn't. Even my birthday passed with little fanfare. A card signed from all of us with Rachel's handwriting in every corner. No dinner, no candle, not even Sophie. The house had fallen into a rhythm that moved without me. One morning I heard laughter coming from the living room, real joyful laughter, Sophie's. I rushed down the stairs, carefully, eager just to see her face. Rachel stood when she saw me. "Oh, we were just heading out," she said quickly, guiding Sophie toward the door. Sophie turned. "Nana, wait," I said, breathless. "Could we maybe bake cookies later like we used to?" Rachel kneeled beside her and whispered something. Sophie looked confused, then nodded hesitantly. "Maybe next time," Rachel said, smiling too widely. "We don't want to overdo it." Overdo what? I wasn't allowed to bake cookies with my granddaughter now. When the door shut, I leaned against the wall, dizzy. I wasn't being included anymore. I was being edited out, not violently, not loudly, but bit by bit, as if someone were erasing my lines from a play and handing them to another actress. And the worst part, Aaron didn't seem to notice. When I brought it up, the new routines, the distance, the way my opinions were dismissed, or decisions made without me, he looked bewildered. "Mom, you've been recovering. Rachel's just trying to help keep things balanced." Balanced. As if I were the weight tipping the whole family off kilter. I started questioning myself. Had I been too opinionated before, too present, too visible? I began to wonder whether maybe I was exhausting. Maybe I had overstepped. Maybe I did need more passivity, as Rachel had phrased it on that phone call. One night, I found myself rereading a message I had drafted but never sent to my old book club. "Miss you all. Hope to rejoin next month." It had been 6 months. What stopped me from hitting send? Shame, maybe. Fear that they'd moved on. or worse, that they'd heard a different version of my story from someone else. Gaslighting doesn't always come in flames. Sometimes it comes in polite redirection, a change of plan, a suggestion to rest, a reworded memory that makes you doubt your own timeline. One evening, I brought up a family recipe, my mother's lemon tart, and Rachel interrupted, laughing. "Oh, I don't think that was your recipe. I found it online years ago." I blinked. "No, I got it from my mother." "Are you sure?" Aaron shrugged. "You always did pull recipes from the internet, Mom." I sat in silence. For 30 years, I made that cake for every birthday. And now suddenly I hadn't. Have you ever felt the edges of your memory being sanded down by others? Have you ever questioned your own story because no one else seemed to remember it the way you did? If that's ever happened to you, please comment below. I want to hear your voice, even if mine is being drowned out. The final straw came not with malice, but with a doorbell. A man in a blue polo stood at the front door, holding a clipboard. "Hi, I'm with Heritage Downs. Just following up on your inquiry about senior assisted living transitions." I stared. Rachel appeared behind me. "Oh, sorry, I meant to intercept him before he rang. Just exploring some future options, no rush, of course. Just planting seeds." Planting seeds. For my removal, I turned to Aaron. He looked stunned but silent. Rachel placed a gentle hand on my back and said, "No decisions made. Just imagining all possibilities. It's what families do." No, it wasn't. Families remember your birthday. They don't erase your recipes or your chair at the table or your granddaughter's voice. That night, I lay in bed, holding the one slipper that had been returned to me in the relocation box. It was pink, with a small bow. The other had never resurfaced. And I realized I was vanishing, but I wasn't gone yet. And before I disappeared completely, I needed to know why. Why was this happening? Why now? I thought I was fading quietly. But then I overheard something I wasn't meant to hear, and everything changed. I had begun to accept the silence. Not embrace it, but wear it like a sweater you don't remember buying, a little itchy, a little too tight, but familiar now, until the phone call. It came on a Thursday morning. I was folding towels, the ones Rachel said I didn't need to bother with anymore, when the landline rang. Not many people used the landline anymore. "Hello, Mrs. Morgan." A warm voice, slightly familiar. "It's Nurse Elena, from the rehab center. I just wanted to check in. I was surprised to hear you'd been discharged early without follow-up." "Discharged early?" "I wasn't told that," I said slowly. There was a pause on the line. "That's strange. According to our notes, your daughter-in-law picked up the paperwork, signed the waiver, and mentioned you'd be moving into full-time assisted care. I just assumed you were settled already." "Assisted care?" "I'm at home," I said, gripping the phone tighter, "and I never agreed to any of that." Elena sounded uneasy now. "Would you like me to send over a copy of the file we had?" "Yes," I said quickly, "please." That envelope arrived 2 days later. I waited until I was alone in the guest room to open it. There it was, in black and white. A signed document with a checkbox ticked "Resident will not return to facility. Family will arrange transition to supportive living." Next to it, scribbled in neat cursive family wishes to handle transition privately. "Patient not capable of consistent self-reporting." I stared at those words. Patient not capable of consistent self-reporting. My stomach twisted. Rachel had signed it. She had written that. That I was mentally unreliable. That my voice, my memory, my judgment could be dismissed. For days I couldn't breathe properly. I sat by the guest window, watching squirrels dart across the fence, wondering what else had been decided without me. What other documents bore my name, but not my consent? Then, like clockwork, the next event unfolded. Aaron knocked on my door. "Hey, Mom. Rachel scheduled a wellness assessment for you. Just a quick in-home visit. Nothing scary." "What kind of assessment?" "You know, for safety. Just to help you get more support." I said nothing. Rachel was already standing behind him with that calm, curated smile. "It's standard now. Preventative care. You'll feel more confident after it, trust me." They tried to frame it as a gift, a little test, to see how independent I still was. The woman who came to conduct it wore a soft pink cardigan and carried a clipboard with pastel tabs. She asked me to remember 3 random words: apple, table, penny. I repeated them. She asked me to draw a clock. I drew it. Then she looked around the guest room, my exile chamber, and said kindly, "Do you know what day of the week it is?" "Yes," I said. "It's Tuesday." She made a note. "It's Friday," she corrected. I froze. Had I lost track? My hands began to tremble. It was Tuesday when I'd received the rehab file. I hadn't left the room since then. The curtains hadn't changed. The hallway light hadn't flicked on at its usual Friday morning time. But now I wasn't sure. I stared at her as she wrote something else, something I wouldn't get to read. The moment she left, Rachel returned like a breeze. "Well, that wasn't so bad, was it?" I asked her directly. "Why did you write on the rehab file that I wasn't capable of reporting on myself?" She blinked, then smiled. "I never said you weren't capable. I said you needed rest." "That's different." "No, it's not." She exhaled. "Okay, if you want to make this harder, fine. But we're doing what's best for the family. We're streamlining things, minimizing stress." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because the word streamlining was showing up again and again. My role, my room, my voice, all streamlined. That night I couldn't sleep, so I went downstairs at 2 a.m. to retrieve an old envelope I remembered storing in the laundry drawer. It held receipts, nothing earth-shattering, but some backup for utilities I'd helped pay after Aaron and Rachel moved in. I didn't find the envelope, but I found something else. Shoved behind a stack of folders was a notarized document. I unfolded it slowly. It was a name transfer form. For the house, effective March 15th. The date I'd had my surgery, my name had been quietly removed from the deed. I stood in the dark laundry room, knees shaking, reading the words again and again. It wasn't just emotional exile. It was legal. I wasn't just losing space. I was losing rights. And then came the spark I never expected. The following morning, a delivery man rang the bell. I answered the door before Rachel could intercept him. "I'm here to confirm delivery of the custom nursery furniture name on the order is Jacqueline Morgan." That was my name. I blinked. "Can I see that?" He handed me the form. Ordered by Rachel Palmer. Billed to Jacqueline Morgan's account ending in 3407. My account. The card I kept for emergencies. A separate account I'd never shared. Rachel had used my identity to open a nursery credit line. Without my knowledge, I felt the floor tilt. "Thank you," I said calmly to the man. "Could you bring that inside?" He obliged. Rachel came down the stairs mid-delivery, froze, and then smiled. "Oh, you weren't supposed to see that yet." Surprise. I looked at her. "You used my name. For family purchases," she said softly. "Nothing big. You'll be part of everything. Everything. Even if I didn't agree, even if I never signed." That afternoon, I received an unexpected visit, Linda, the home aide, who had helped me during my first week back from the hospital. A kind woman in her 40s who liked to hum while folding towels. She pulled me aside. "I shouldn't say this, but your daughter-in-law asked me something odd." She wanted to know what signs to look for in early cognitive decline and how soon a legal guardian could be assigned. "I thought you should know." I froze. She added, "I told her you seemed perfectly sharp to me." My heart thundered. They weren't just isolating me. They were preparing a case, a file, a narrative where I was the one losing grip and she was the savior documenting my decline. Have you ever had someone rewrite your life while you're still living it? If someone quietly tried to erase your ability to speak for yourself, how would you prove the truth? I need to hear from you. Leave your thoughts below. Because I'm not crazy. I know I'm not. That night, I pulled out my notebook. I wrote everything. The forged rehab paperwork, the cognitive assessment setup, the name removal on the house deed, the nursery charged to my account, Linda's warning, and I added one final line: "I will not be erased quietly." From that moment on, I stopped playing nice. I stopped waiting, and I started watching for every slip, every move, every whisper. Because this game wasn't about recovery anymore. It was about survival. From the outside, I still looked like the quiet mother-in-law recovering in the upstairs guest room, folding blankets, sipping herbal tea, stepping carefully down the stairs with my cane. But inside, I was building a case, a silent one, a deliberate one. Every morning before anyone else woke up, I opened the Notes app on my old phone, the one Rachel assumed was too outdated to still function, and I typed in time-stamped entries. 6:12 a.m. Kitchen camera shifts right after I enter. Wasn't doing that before. 6:45 a.m. No mail in my name again. Asked Rachel, said everything's digital now. I never went paperless. I didn't know what I would do with this yet. I only knew I couldn't keep second-guessing myself. Then came the first stroke of luck. I had long suspected that someone had access to my financial accounts. After the furniture delivery billed to my personal card, I decided to test a theory. I left my wallet in the linen closet, tucked deep inside folded sheets. The card was there at 9:04 a.m. By 2:17 p.m. it was gone. I waited. At 4:32 p.m. it was back, in the exact position, but rotated. I checked the transaction history online. A new subscription had been started to a parenting app for newborns, set up under my name. That night, I slipped into the laundry room where I'd once found the property document, and there it was, the hidden drawer Rachel clearly thought I'd forgotten. This time I brought gloves. I pulled out the manila folder, careful not to smudge anything. Inside, a notarized letter stating that I had voluntarily withdrawn financial control for stress reasons. A power of attorney form unsigned by me but with my name filled in. A checklist titled Steps to Protect Elders. When cognitively declining with multiple boxes ticked, daily medication confusion, fails to track dates, becomes withdrawn. Next to each, a date and a brief incident. My stomach twisted. These were fabricated incidents, a narrative she was building carefully, piece by piece. She wasn't just trying to erase me, she was trying to replace me legally. I photographed everything. Flash off. Each page captured in case the originals mysteriously vanished. And then something unexpected happened. Linda, the home aide who had warned me earlier, returned. Not officially. She came by after hours. She'd forgotten a bracelet she said had slipped behind the dresser. Once inside, she slipped me a small device. A voice recorder, she whispered. I'm not saying you need it. But if things start sounding different from what actually happened, I nodded, pressing the cool metal into my palm. That night, I placed the recorder beneath the dining room buffet, where I knew Rachel often took afternoon calls. The next day I retrieved it and listened. Rachel's voice clipped and fast. No, she's still in the house, but not for long. We're finalizing the mental fitness affidavit by next Friday. After that, she's out. I've already blocked the house deed from being challenged, unless someone has power of attorney. Which she won't. A pause. Then no, she hasn't figured it out yet. She still thinks she's part of the family. Click. I sat on the floor, gripping the recorder. Hands trembling. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was angry and focused. I uploaded the audio file to 2 places, my old Dropbox and an email I created just for this moment, under a name Rachel wouldn't recognize. Then I did what I hadn't done in months. I called my friend Georgia. Can you meet me? I whispered. Somewhere neutral, somewhere quiet. She didn't ask questions, just said yes. We met at the edge of the library garden, a place where we used to bring Sophie to play with duck-shaped water cans. I wore sunglasses and a scarf, like someone in a spy novel. I handed her a flash drive. Listen to this. And don't tell anyone where you got it. She listened. And then, for the first time in weeks, someone looked at me without doubt in their eyes. Jacqueline, she said softly, you need to see someone. Not a doctor, a lawyer. I hesitated. Is it too soon? No, she said. It might already be almost too late. Have you ever gathered the pieces of your own defense in secret, not because you did something wrong, but because someone was rewriting the world around you? If you had the proof that someone was destroying you behind a smile, would you confront them immediately or wait for the perfect moment? Please comment below. Your instincts might help someone reading this right now. After meeting Georgia, I returned home feeling lighter and heavier all at once. Rachel was in the nursery folding baby clothes into neat triangles. She glanced at me as I passed. "You okay?" "Just went for a walk," I replied. "You're glowing," she said. "Walking must really be helping your cognition." There it was again, the thread, the subtle weave into her pattern. I smiled. "You're probably right." That night, I opened the recorder again. I left it running while I pretended to sleep. Just past midnight, I heard soft footsteps. Rachel's voice whispering to Erin. "She's getting sharper. I don't like it. If she pushes too much, we'll need to escalate." I'm not waiting for her to contest anything. Erin murmured something I couldn't make out. Then Rachel's voice again. "We've come too far. One slip and she could flip everything. One slip." But the slip wouldn't be mine. The next morning, I received an email from my old accountant, one I hadn't spoken to in over a year. "Mrs. Morgan, I was surprised to receive a request to consolidate all assets under your daughter-in-law's name. Please confirm," seemed odd, given your past instructions. I felt a rush of adrenaline. Rachel had overstepped. I replied immediately, "Do not transfer anything. Meet me in person. Alone." I printed that email thread, filed it with the others. My case was growing. So was the danger. And as I stepped back into the hallway that night, I saw something chilling. On the refrigerator was a new list written in Rachel's handwriting. "After next week, move nursery items fully. Begin senior care transition. Cancel old insurance plans. Update legal representation. Remove medication duplicates." She wasn't just planning around me. She was planning after me. But she didn't realize I'd already set the next step in motion. And soon, she'd be the one being watched. They always think women like me just appear calm, poised, efficient, slightly too polished. They think it's natural, like I was born with a color-coded calendar in one hand and a charming, patient smile in the other. But control like this, it's earned, built, thread by thread. I learned that early in a house where chaos lived in the walls. My mother was unpredictable. You never knew what version of her would walk through the front door. She could be singing Christmas carols in June or throwing dinner plates at the refrigerator. She called it creative spirit. I called it survival training. I kept my rooms spotless. I kept my grades perfect. I watched every adult in my life carefully learned when to stay quiet, when to smile, when to disappear. And when I met Erin, I saw it instantly. Stability. He was everything my childhood wasn't: calm, kind, reliable, structured. His mother had raised him that way, of course. Jacqueline was a woman who had ironed napkins for Sunday lunch. At first, I admired her. She had a home that smelled like cinnamon and wood polish, a freezer stocked with labeled leftovers, a hallway lined with frames in perfect symmetry. But somewhere along the way, admiration turned into suffocation. Because perfect mothers, the kind who smile without cracking, who make sacrifice a personality they don't step aside. Not even when they should. Even after we married, she was always there, hovering, offering, deciding. She wanted to help with everything, rearranging our pantry for efficiency, suggesting pediatricians, just in case, reminding me that Aaron had a dairy sensitivity until age 6. And Aaron let her. Of course he did. Because when you're raised by someone who wraps control in affection, you don't call it interference. You call it love. When we moved into the house, her house, it was supposed to be temporary. But months turned into years. And every year I felt myself shrinking just a little more. It was always her couch, her kitchen, her family recipes. Even when I carried the first grandchild, even then, she made it clear I was part of the next generation, but she was still queen. So when she fell, when she landed in that hospital bed, with her hip in a brace, and her hands trembling slightly, I saw an opening, not to hurt her, to finally breathe. I told Erin we needed to reimagine the space. I said the baby needed a central room, natural light, calm colors. I said she'd love the new guest room. He agreed. Because he always agrees, especially if I smile the right way. I meant it to be graceful, gentle, a transition. But when she came home and looked at the nursery, her old room, her eyes said it all. She knew. She knew I'd started the shift, that I was drawing the borders now. Still, I didn't expect her to recover so quickly. At first, she was slow, moved like a ghost, didn't argue. That's how it's supposed to go. If you move quiet enough, the past doesn't protest. But she started paying attention, asking questions, watching. I underestimated her. So I did what I'd always done, planned ahead. I gathered small evidence, innocent slips, moments of forgetfulness, repeating herself, getting the day wrong. Nothing major, but together it formed a story, one the right people would believe. I filed the power of attorney paperwork just in case. I used her card for family purchases, small things. Nothing illegal, not yet. Because truthfully, she'd always said everything she had was for the family. Now I was just formalizing that. And when the social worker came for the assessment, I made sure the lighting was soft, the questions gentle, the tea warm. I didn't need her to fail the test. I just needed her to hesitate. That was enough. But then Linda the nurse started asking too many questions. So I cancelled the next visit. And that old friend Georgia, she's meddling now. I can feel it. Jacqueline thinks she's being clever, taking notes, recording things. But I know that house better than she thinks. I know how to shift the story just enough to make her look paranoid, exhausted, reactive. I've watched women like her unravel, not because they're weak, but because they can't let go. Aaron doesn't see it, not yet. He still sees Mom when he looks at her. But soon he'll see what I see: someone tired, someone slipping, someone in the way. And when the baby arrives, he'll need peace, stability, me. Do I feel guilty sometimes? But I think about the world I was raised in, the unpredictability, the fear, the hunger to be safe. And I remind myself, this isn't about her. It's about never being at the mercy of another woman's control again. Because I've learned one thing. There's always a Jacqueline, a woman who calls herself the pillar of the family. But pillars can crumble, and I've made sure mine won't. Not this time. Do you think that makes me cruel? Would you call this self-preservation or strategy? Do you believe someone's past pain gives them the right to manipulate the present? Tell me in the comments. I want to know what you really think, because stories like this don't have easy villains. Or do they? Tomorrow I meet with the notary. Next week the lawyer. And soon after, the final signature on the guardianship forms. Aaron doesn't even know yet, but he will. And Jacqueline, she won't get another chance to rewrite the ending, because I'm going to finish this before she even knows the final act has begun. There's something strange about fighting a war no one else sees. The kitchen still smells like lemon cleaner. The floors still gleam. The house hums with quiet order. And yet, every movement, every silence, every, "oh, don't worry about it," feels like a calculated step on a chessboard I never agreed to play. But that week, the silence cracked, not because I forced it, but because someone else saw what I saw. It started with a knock on the door. Rachel wasn't home. Aaron was at work. I almost didn't answer, but I did. He stood there in a navy windbreaker, his hair thinner than I remembered, but those eyes still sharp, still kind. "Jacqueline," he asked. I blinked. Michael. Michael King, my late husband's best friend. The man who gave the toast at our wedding. The one who'd disappeared after moving to Oregon. "I'm sorry for showing up unannounced," he said. "But I got a strange email from Aaron, or at least it was supposed to be from him. And then I got an even stranger voicemail." He stepped inside. I offered him tea. We sat in the sunroom, the one place Rachel hadn't completely redesigned yet. He pulled out his phone and opened his inbox. "Here. This came 3 weeks ago." I leaned in. The subject line read, "End-of-life estate transfer for Jacqueline Morgan." I froze. The sender a masked address, but the signature read, "On behalf of the Morgan household family representative R. Palmer." "She sent this to you," I whispered. He nodded. But what really threw me was the wording. It claimed you had voluntarily delegated estate rights to your son's wife and had no immediate surviving spouse. It also claimed your cognitive capacity had been medically downgraded. I sat there heart pounding. That's a lie. He tapped his screen. I know, that's why I came. Then he showed me a second file, an audio file, a voicemail. He pressed play. Rachel's voice. Hi, Michael. Just a courtesy message. We're finalizing Jacqueline's estate decisions, and since you were once named on her durable power of attorney backup, we're required to notify you that she's entering step-down cognitive protocol. Let us know if you'd like to waive notification moving forward. I stared at him. She tried to remove you. He nodded. Legally, she can't without your signature. But she didn't think I'd double-check. My mind spun. Michael, a man I'd listed 15 years ago on a backup power of attorney form, was still on file. Rachel had found out. And rather than ask me to remove him, she tried to do it behind my back. He reached into his bag and pulled out a printed document. Jacqueline, you're still on the deed of this house. I looked it up in the county records last night. There's no completed transfer of ownership. But I saw she drafted it, filed it to prepare for submission. But it was never finalized. She needs either your notarized signature or proof of legal guardianship. She has neither. I felt dizzy. So all this, everything she's done, was to push you into a state where no one would question her final move. I covered my mouth. He looked me in the eye. Jacqueline, you have leverage, but you need to move. Carefully. We spent 2 hours gathering everything. I showed him the emails, the recordings, the bank activity. He took photos, made duplicates. Then he said something that made my blood chill. I think Rachel's preparing a motion for involuntary conservatorship. Conservatorship, I repeated. It's a legal move that could strip you of your rights, especially if she can prove you're a risk to your own estate. Once that's in place, she'd control everything. I felt my breath lock in my chest. She wasn't just trying to move me out. She was trying to silence me forever legally. But now, I had someone on my side. And Michael wasn't just a family friend. He was also a retired estate attorney. That night, we drafted a preservation notice. He emailed it to 3 institutions, my bank, my pharmacy, and the county clerk. In it, he wrote, any attempt to alter or revoke legal rights of Ms. Jacqueline Morgan must be placed on administrative hold, pending verification of capacity by an independent evaluator not affiliated with the petitioner. In other words, Rachel's hands were tied. I went to bed feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Protected. Have you ever had someone step in for you, not because they had to, but because they saw the truth? You were too tired to prove any more. Do you believe outsiders sometimes see things clearer than family ever can? If someone unexpected ever saved you from being erased, share it in the comments. Someone out there might need to read your story right now. The next morning, Rachel's voice at the front door rang out sharp. Who filed this? She waved the printed preservation email in the air. I stood in the hallway, calm, still. I did, I said. She blinked. You, I nodded. I know what you've been doing. Her face twitched just slightly. I don't know what you mean. But she did. And she knew I knew. I didn't need to yell, or cry, or make a scene. Because for the first time, she was the one off balance. The next 2 days were quiet. Too quiet. Rachel moved through the house like someone walking across ice, unsure where it might crack. I heard her whispering to Aaron, to someone on the phone, to herself. But I didn't interfere. I watched. I waited. And I knew the game had changed. I wasn't alone anymore. And this time, I would be the one drawing the line. It was Aaron's birthday. Rachel had planned a brunch, intimate, curated, Instagram-ready. 8 guests, a catered waffle bar. Gold balloons, shaped like 38, floated above the sideboard. The house gleamed. I wasn't on the guest list, but I was in the house. I hadn't been invited to help set up, nor was I expected to attend. Rachel had framed it as a casual morning gathering with Aaron's co-workers and some mutuals. Mutuals in her vocabulary meant people she could control the narrative with. But that morning I got dressed early, pressed the hem of my blouse, brushed my hair, and slipped the flash drive into my pocket. I walked down the stairs as guests arrived, one hand firm on the railing, one hand gripping the edge of my resolve. Rachel saw me from across the room. Her smile flickered. "Oh, Jacqueline, you're up. I thought you might prefer to rest today." I returned her smile. "I wouldn't miss my son's birthday," I said evenly, "and I have a gift for him." She froze for just a second. Aaron was laughing with his colleague near the coffee cart. He looked happy, the kind of happy that had become rarer in recent months, like sunshine through fog. "Hi, Mom," he said when I approached. "You made it down okay?" "I did," I replied. "And I brought something I'd like to share with everyone, if that's all right." He blinked. "Oh, sure, what is it?" I turned to the room, raising my voice gently but clearly. "I know most of you don't know me very well. I've been quieter lately. But I think there's something important my son deserves to hear, and that you all deserve to know." Rachel stepped forward. "Jacqueline, this isn't really—" I held up a hand. "Please," I said. "It will only take 5 minutes." I walked to the living room where Rachel had positioned the smart TV above the mantel, one of her many upgrades. I plugged in the flash drive. A folder appeared on the screen. "For Aaron, Truth Matters." I clicked play. The room filled with Rachel's voice. Calm, unbothered. From the recording I'd captured weeks ago. "She's still in the house, but not for long. We're finalizing the affidavit. After that, she's out. I've already blocked the house deed from being challenged unless someone has power of attorney, which she won't." A hush fell across the room. Someone gasped. Rachel's hand clutched her mug too tightly. "That's taken out of context," she said. I clicked the next clip. "We're streamlining everything. Less chaos. She doesn't even know what day it is half the time." I turned toward Erin. "She told the rehab center I was mentally unfit. She tried to take my name off the house deed. She used my emergency account to furnish a nursery. She emailed legal contacts behind your back, and when that wasn't enough, she began building a legal case to silence me for good." Rachel's face flushed deep crimson. "Erin," she snapped, "don't let her do this." But he wasn't looking at her. He was staring at me, then at the screen, then back again. "What is this?" he whispered. "She's lying," Rachel said. "She's paranoid. We were protecting her." Michael stepped forward from the back of the room. He'd arrived quietly as planned. "I'm an attorney," he said calmly, "and I can confirm everything Jacqueline just said, including forged documentation, filed affidavits, and multiple attempts to initiate financial transfers without consent." Rachel's mouth opened, then shut. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God." Another voice, "Is this real?" I looked at Aaron. "I never wanted to do this publicly," I said, "but I've been pushed, ignored, erased in my own home, and I'm done pretending it didn't happen." Aaron looked like he'd been dropped into the center of a storm he'd never seen brewing. I don't know what to say," he murmured. "Then don't," I said. "Just listen." Rachel reached out. "Aaron, don't let this spiral. It's her word against—" "It's not just her word," Michael said. "It's her word, plus evidence, plus state filings, plus notarized documents you forged and never submitted, but tried to." Rachel turned to him, eyes blazing. "You have no idea what I've done for this family." "Actually," I said, stepping forward, "I do." Because now the room was looking at her. And not like before, not with admiration or envy or polished curiosity. With suspicion. With doubt. With the same unease I'd felt for months. Have you ever stood in front of people who used to ignore your voice and finally had them hear you? If you had one shot to reveal the truth after being dismissed for so long, would you take it in public, or would you protect the people who erased you? Tell me in the comments. Because silence isn't safety, not when someone else is rewriting your life. Aaron sat down slowly. His hands were shaking. Rachel turned toward the kitchen, maybe to retreat, maybe to regroup. But then he said it. "I need to see everything." She paused. "What?" "I want to see all of it. The files, the emails, the account transfers. If you're telling the truth, you'll show me. Her face twisted not in fear, in fury. And that's when I knew this wasn't over. But something had broken open. Later that evening, the guests had gone. The balloons sagged. The gold 3 was twisted sideways. Aaron hadn't said much more. He'd gone into the office, shut the door. Rachel had vanished upstairs. I sat alone in the living room, staring at the screen where my voice had finally echoed again. And in the silence, I knew this wasn't the final battle, because Rachel wouldn't give up power. Not without a final move. But the shock she's planning next will turn out to be her biggest mistake. 3 days after the birthday brunch, a certified envelope arrived addressed to me. It was from a law firm in downtown Sacramento. Inside a formal notice that a petition for conservatorship had been filed, naming me Jacqueline Morgan as an individual of declining cognitive capacity and proposing Rachel Palmer as the proposed conservator. My breath caught. She did it, even after the exposure, even after the audio, the emails, the public confrontation. Rachel had gone ahead with it. Not through Aaron, not through a family counselor. She went legal. But what she didn't realize was this. I had already retained my own attorney. Michael had connected me with a quiet but razor-sharp elder law specialist, Clara Shue, a former judge turned advocate. She was known for 2 things, her precision and her intolerance for abuse of process. We met that same afternoon. Clara sat across from me at her conference table, her pen tapping lightly as I recounted everything. She said very little, until I slid over the flash drive, the notarized bank statements, the fake rehab waiver, the attempted POA transfer, and finally, the Sacramento Superior Court filing Rachel had submitted. She clicked her pen shut and simply said, "She's finished." The next morning, Clara filed a formal countermotion under California Welfare and Institutions Code, Parallel Y 350, which protects adults from being wrongfully placed under conservatorship without clear and convincing evidence of grave disability. Rachel's filing had included no medical documentation, no psychological evaluation, no third-party witness, and according to California Probate Code, paragraph 1821, that meant her petition was legally incomplete and subject to immediate dismissal. But we didn't want dismissal. We wanted a hearing, because in that courtroom, I wanted her lies read out loud. I wanted a judge and Aaron to hear it from someone who didn't live inside these walls. The hearing was scheduled 3 days later. Small courtroom, quiet, grey carpeting and hushed voices. Rachel arrived in a cream blazer and silk blouse, her expression tight but confident. Aaron sat beside her, silent. I entered with Clara and Michael. The judge, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, asked for opening remarks. Rachel's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, this is not an act of malice. My client's intent is purely based on concern. Mrs. Morgan has demonstrated repeated memory issues, confusion regarding financial accounts, and emotional volatility that may indicate a risk to herself and her estate." Clara stood next. "With respect, Your Honor, the only risk here is a calculated attempt to seize legal authority under false pretense. We will demonstrate not only Mrs. Morgan's full capacity, but also a pattern of deceit, unauthorized financial activity, and attempted fraud by the petitioner." And then the evidence began. First, the audio. Rachel's voice, crystal clear, discussing guardianship strategy and shutting her out before she catches on. Second, the financial report. A forensic accountant, yes. Michael had gone that far, testified that Rachel had used Jacqueline's personal emergency account to make over $11,000 in purchases, most related to the nursery wellness services and meal subscriptions. Third, the document trail, the altered rehab discharge form, the forged POA, the email to Michael attempting to wave him out of the picture. Rachel's face paled as each piece was presented. "Aaron." He kept his head down. The judge turned to me. "Mrs. Morgan, would you like to speak?" I stood. My voice shook, not with fear but with history. I raised my son in that house. I bathed him when he had the flu. I paid the taxes on that property for 12 years after my husband died. I helped build the life they're living now, and I was willing to share it until someone tried to delete me from it. Then Clara delivered the blow. Your Honor, under California Penal Code 368, elder financial abuse is defined as the illegal or improper use of an elder's funds, property, or assets. We are not only requesting full dismissal of the conservatorship petition, we are preparing to file a separate complaint, civil and possibly criminal, pending review. The courtroom went silent. Rachel's lawyer turned pale. Your Honor? The judge raised her hand. Sit down, counsel. She turned to Rachel, then delivered the line I will never forget. Ms. Palmer, when someone paints over a room, it doesn't erase the foundation underneath. And from where I sit, you've tried to paint over an entire person. She struck the desk once with her gavel. Petition denied. Mrs. Morgan retains all legal and medical rights, and I strongly recommend the petitioner seek her own legal counsel immediately. Rachel sat frozen. Aaron looked at her, then at me. He didn't say anything, but his eyes said everything. The courtroom emptied. Clara turned to me. We can pursue charges. It's your call. I shook my head. Not yet. Because even after all this, even after the humiliation, the erasure, the betrayal, I didn't want revenge. I wanted sovereignty. Have you ever stood in a room where power once belonged to someone else, and finally it was handed back to you by law? Would you press charges if someone used love as a weapon to try and control your life? Let me know in the comments. Justice isn't just legal, it's personal. We stepped out into the sunlight. My name was still mine. My voice was legally affirmed. And Rachel, she didn't look back. But I knew this wasn't the final page, because it wasn't enough to win in court. I had to win in my own home, and the final step would be about reclaiming who I was long before she tried to redefine me. The morning after the hearing, I made pancakes. Not the protein oat kind Rachel used to order real pancakes. Buttermilk, vanilla crisp at the edges. I used my old blue ceramic mug, the one I thought had been thrown away. I found it behind the boxes in the garage, still intact, slightly dusty, but familiar in my hands. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. Rachel had moved into silence. She barely left her room. No more smoothies in the kitchen. No more passive-aggressive notes on the fridge. No more phone calls on speaker plotting things behind my back. Aaron was quieter too. I didn't push him. I didn't ask questions. I simply lived. Because the point wasn't to win him back. It was to win myself back. That week I scheduled a few things. Not meetings. Not appointments. Moves. The first was a brunch I hosted just for 3 friends, Georgia, Linda, and Michael. We sat out in the garden, surrounded by daisies I'd planted years ago, sipping coffee and laughing like teenagers. You look different, Georgia said. I smiled. I feel different. The second was a call I made to a local nonprofit that helps elder women transition into part-time consulting work. I told them I used to manage community events and finances for our church. They told me I'd be perfect to train their younger staff. That same day, I went to the bookstore downtown and bought a journal hardback, plum-colored clean pages. On the inside cover, I wrote, "The Book of Not Disappearing." And every night I filled a page, not with bitterness, but with memory. The third move, I restructured the title on the house. Not to reclaim dominance, but to protect peace. I split it legally 50% in Aaron's name, 50% in mine, with a clause requiring joint consent for any sale or change. I handed him the documents one morning over coffee. "Why would you do this?" he asked. "Because I raised a good man," I said. "And I want to believe he still lives here." He cried. Not loud, but I saw it. That same week, I got a text from Sophie's school. It was a forwarded invitation to Grandparents' Day. I hadn't received it directly, but someone, probably her teacher, made sure it reached me. I showed up, wore a pink blouse, brought homemade cookies. Sophie saw me from across the room and ran full speed, throwing her arms around me. I held her, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like a relic in my own bloodline. Rachel was there at the back of the classroom. She didn't approach me, but she saw. She saw everything. After the event, she followed me outside. There was no apology. Not really. Just a quiet, "You're stronger than I thought." I nodded, I know, and I walked away. Because strength doesn't always mean striking back. Sometimes it means walking through the fire and never letting them see you burn. Have you ever known someone who went from invisible to undeniable, not through revenge, but through presence? Share their story in the comments, or share your own, because someone reading this might need to know it's possible, that you can go from discarded to deeply respected. Last week, I held a small gathering, not for a birthday or a baby or any milestone anyone else planned. It was just mine. I invited the people who made me feel seen. I played my favorite records. I served tea in mismatched cups. I lit a candle not for mourning, but for beginning. And when someone asked what the occasion was, I said simply, I remembered who I was and decided to stay. If you want more stories like this, real, raw, and victorious, don't forget to subscribe. There's so much more to tell.